to go through everything. I mean, we saw them get suited up. They had a great ride out to the pad. All of their initial checks on both the suits with pressure checks and communication checks went well. Able to get the Dragon hatch closed, the launch escape system arm, and Falcon 9 started its fueling. Just not able to make a good weather window today.
And as John I said earlier, it was just another great rehearsal today. I don't think you can get enough practice doing this. So when Saturday comes, or when the day that we can actually launch the vehicle, Bob and Doug and the NASA and SpaceX team are fully prepared with just an extra rehearsal on the belt now.
As we had talked a couple of times throughout our countdown, the weather is a lot more complex when we're launching humans. You have some more stringent requirements in place, not only around the pad, but in the case of this launch today, we were also looking at whether the entire ascent corridor, as we call it, so basically the entire way that they were flying up the east coast of the United States in this launch today, we're monitoring that weather because those are areas that if they have an ascent abort, or basically Dragon firing off of the Falcon 9 while they're flying into space, we have to make sure that conditions are good in the sea states around those areas, just so they're not going to be landing in the middle of a hurricane, which we did have a tropical storm forming right off the coast of South Carolina today, just to help complicate things a little bit.
And people might be asking, if we knew the weather was going to be a little iffy today, why continue to count down? Well, that is the reason why we do all these checks all the way to countdown. In Florida, the weather is, pretty sporadic. Sometimes a thunderstorm or hurricane will pass through. Within 20 minutes, it's gone, and we could have clear skies for a safe launch.
Итак, я всех приветствую. Сейчас идет трансляция по запуску, первому запуску с живыми астронавтами. Вот. Ведет трансляцию НАСА. И осталось буквально считанные минуты до полноценного запуска. Все присоединяйтесь, увидим это первыми. По-братски.
And Dan, Jesse, a couple of things to add on there. Right now we are 11 minutes after the scrub was called. Liquid oxygen and fuel are coming off of the first stage. Hard to tell from the view. It's still a little misty around the tank because there's locks on board. But we're between half and a third of each of the fuel and LOX tanks filled on the first stage.
Ну, в общем, они сейчас к чему-то подготавливаются. Я не совсем понимаю технических терминов. Два астронавта уже готовы к запуску. Надеюсь, не представляю, как они нервничают, потому что до этого конкретно именно эта ракета от непосредственно Илона Маска не летала с людьми. Были только тестовые взлеты, а сейчас они отправятся непосредственно на МКС. И вот все это должны мы увидеть в прямом эфире, как они состыкуются, как их там встретят, не прогонят ли.
Open up the hatch and assist the astronauts out of the Dragon. I'd like to point out that for those who are wondering whether or not, having gone through this, putting propellant, pressurization gases on, getting fairly close to launch, whether that has done anything to wear out the Falcon 9 or the Dragon, the answer is no. If you can recall, the Falcon 9 is designed for at least 10 flights, and about time we get up to a 10th flight, we'll be doing testing.
Вот, как я сейчас читаю по информации, до этого был всего лишь один испытательный полет, именно до МКС, в качестве грузовика. То есть непосредственно ракета привезла какое-то пропитание, либо еще что-то на МКС. Но именно с людьми это самый первый запуск.
The other good thing is that the most stressing part of the flight for the Falcon 9 on the first stage is the re-entry. So we didn't even get through that. So we're sitting here on the pad. It's a fairly
еще интересно тем, что именно на этом запуске будет крайне мало людей, так как из-за пандемии, соответственно, не будет большого количества людей, которые обычно собираются на мыс Канарло, на мысе, короче, на мысе Канарло и наблюдают за стартом ракет. В этот раз только несколько журналистов, в основном, ну и, соответственно, команда, которая запускает ракеты.
The automatic sequences that we use routinely, both at the launch sites, Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral, even Vandenberg.
Также астронавтов отправляли на двухнедельный предполетный карантин из-за предосторожности, чтобы они не занесли на МКС коронавирус. Поэтому можно быть уверенным в том, что они чисты, прекрасны, великолепны и полностью готовы к данному полету. Кстати, сидят они в ракете уже приблизительно, я не знаю, часа 2, наверное, в таком напряжении.
A long enough window. We only had 1 second and we needed 10 minutes. So we'll have to ask offline and say, hey, did the weather conditions improve? And one thing I'll tag on to that Dan was mentioning and Jesse was talking about the launch opportunities. The launch window does move earlier on Saturday a little bit. So it just happened to be Orbital Dynamics said today, if you want to go to the International Space Station, and you want to launch northeast, which is the approved trajectory, you have to go right at 4:35 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. You pick another day.
Как я наблюдаю, астронавты явно пытаются снять напряжение, потому что они, вот, один из них нервно натирает панель. И не думаю, что это является каким-то технической проверкой, скорее всего. Просто напряжение. А второй просто тыкает в кнопочки. Они уже сами, им бы уже быстрее улететь. Хотя я не представляю, каково вот ощущение, когда первый раз тестируешь новую ракету. Грубо говоря, от тебя зависит, будет ли она летать уже с космонавтами после тебя.
Just not able to clear all of those constraints. We keep a very close eye on the weather around the pad and their whole way uphill.
Разговоры про погоду. Не знаю, что они говорят про погоду, то ли плохо, то ли хорошо. Судя по обстановке, там немножечко, конечно, не стопроцентная видимость. Я думаю, для ракеты это не помеха. Топливом ее уже должны были накачать, и до старта остается буквально 10-15 минут, может быть, даже поменьше.
Yeah, we copy, Jay. We appreciate that update. We could see some raindrops on the windows and just figured that whatever it was too close to the launch pad at the time we needed it not to be. So we appreciate that and understand that everybody's probably a little bit bummed out. It's just part of the deal. Everybody was ready today, and we appreciate that. And the ship was great. And we'll do it again, I think, on Saturday.
Copy all, and yeah, we concur. And appreciate your resilience sitting there in the vehicle for us.
We got the easy job. Nothing better than being prime crew on a new spaceship.
Copy all, and yeah, copy that.
Some great words from Bob and Doug. They're feeling good inside Dragon. They'll be ready to go when we make our next attempt on Saturday. Right now, we're just still waiting for all of the fuel to come off the Falcon 9 rocket. After
Stage
that,
1 LOX and fuel roughly 20%, and stage 2 fuel 36%.
and so that call right there, we're still at a little over 20% on fuel, RP1, and LOX, liquid oxygen on the first stage. and then at about 26% on RP1 on that second stage. So again, it takes about 40 minutes once the process starts, so we should have right around 30 minutes or so until all that fuel's off. And then the crew will get the go to disarm the launch escape system. We'll see that crew access arm swing back into place, and they can begin to egress or get out of the Dragon spacecraft.
And you heard it live, that weather update of what we violated. We were just 10 minutes off, unfortunately, but again, today was an instantaneous launch. And as John explained, it's due to the orbital mechanics and making sure that at the time we launch, it will allow us to get to the space station on time and accurately. So you can see on your right screen, Bob and Doug are patiently waiting. They do still have their visors on and still strapped into their seats. The launch escape system is still armed right now as we are offloading fuel and will not disarm until
В данный момент, я так понимаю, что-то еще закачивают, судя по тому, что у шаттла торчат какие-то провода, возможно, что-то другое делают. А вот космонавты, похоже, просто вот они сидят, и, по-моему, даже на их экранах ничего не меняется. Они смотрят просто какую-то информацию и никак не взаимодействуют. Похоже, у них пока нет никаких задач.
If you're going to scrub, probably rather scrub for weather than an issue on either Falcon 9 or Dragon, and we weren't tracking any issues with the flight systems throughout our countdown today. Everything passed with leak checks on the hatches and the crew suits, all the communications working great, all the teams were ready to go. So, as John and I said, always nice to have a little bit more practice, and we'll be right back at it on Saturday.
What would this launch be if it wasn't even more exciting to try and launch today, and now we have to push it to Saturday?
Really got to build the suspense.
Yes. So.
Hey, Dan and Jesse. Another thought crossed my mind while I'm watching the diagram here showing fuel is just about off. First and second stage we're down under 10%. LOX is also just about off of first stage.
10%,
yep, we're getting the announcement. Stage 2 fuels at 20%. Stage 1 LOX is under 10%. So just continuing to come off of the vehicle as expected. On the monitor, Bob and Doug continue with visors down. Their launch escape system is armed, as we've mentioned. If there is anything that were happen to go wrong right now, they still have the viable pad abort means, something that we demonstrated way back in 2015 on one of these webcasts when we fired the Dragon capsule using the 8 Super Dracos off of the launch pad.
Вот сейчас нам диктор говорит про специальную капсулу, которая обеспечивает безопасность в случае неполадки или взрыва, что крайне неблагоприятно. И данная система должна обеспечить непосредственно космонавтам безопасность и как-то отвести их от горящей ракеты. Но это не дает стопроцентной гарантии, что с ними будет все в порядке. Я думаю, они это знают. Кстати, зацените, какие костюмчики четкие. Намного красивее, чем прям вот прям стиль. Илон Маск знает, как сделать красиво.
We did not launch today. We did have a scrub because of weather, but as we were saying, we are looking forward to trying this again on Saturday. Our launch time on Saturday will be another instantaneous window, so we'll have to have the weather cooperate again, and that launch time will be at 3:22 p.m. Eastern.
Похоже, они сейчас ищут подходящую погоду, ждут. Потому что уже несколько раз проверяли погоду, и она им явно не нравится, так как запуск уже должен был состояться.
And the optimists have to subtract that from 100% to go, hey, 60% chance, I'll plan my picnic. We were listening, the SpaceX launch director, Mike Taylor, was talking to the launch weather officer asking about the 3 criteria that scrubbed us today. It sounds like in another minute or two, the lightning and the attached anvil cloud rules will clear. The
Close
field
out
mill
on
rule,
stage
charge in
one
the
blocks
atmosphere,
and stage RP should
is
be
still
clear
bouncing
in
around, and
minutes.
so,
Expect
hey,
about
we
10
may
more
need,
minutes of upload for stage
several
one
more
field.
minutes before that one would clear. So we'd need even longer than 10 minutes in the window today, it looks like, for all the rules to clear.
Ну вот 10 минут им еще
What I
требуется.
wanted to mention a little while ago, I got lost listening to the weather brief, but there are a lot of folks who are going, why an instantaneous launch window for Falcon 9
Либо
and
10
Dragon?
минут окна для
Now,
взлета.
typically when we go to the space
Именно
station,
хорошей
when we do the
погоды.
mission planning, it's an instantaneous
Чтобы ракет
window.
не сдуло, то
There
будет, конечно,
may be
нехорошая
enough
ситуация.
performance in the rocket to launch somewhere in a 5-minute period, but you've got to pick a time in there. But in the case of Falcon 9, once we start propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes, it doesn't matter so much if you can move 5 or 10 minutes left or right, because the whole sequence is scripted. We do the flight analysis assuming that the temperatures of the propellants are below a certain amount so that we know how much performance is available to the rocket, how much margin we're going to have. So essentially, if you start the countdown, 4 hours, 8 hours out like we were doing today, and you have a very short window, once you get into propellant loading at T-minus 35 minutes, you have to go as soon as you get to zero. We don't have the ability to stop the countdown, wait 5 minutes. Now all of a sudden the liquid oxygen starts warming up from 340 degrees below zero in the ground system, and that changes how much performance you get carrying into orbit, and we don't want to cut into those margins. Now, if we had had something like a 4-hour window, which some communication satellites have, we could actually get down to almost zero, hold the count, detank the Falcon 9, wait a while, it takes us about an hour and a half, reload a whole new batch of cold liquid oxygen and fuel from the big storage tank that we've got there at Pad 39A, and try to launch again. But in that case, you have to be able to launch, about an hour and a half or so later after you scrub. And in the case of the International Space Station, an hour and a
На
half
что-то
from
показывает
now
один из
is
астронавтов
nowhere near where we need
несколько
to
раз
be,
уже вниз.
to get
Либо он
some
уже
performance
хочет
of
спуститься
the
вниз, и он
Falcon 9 and
передумал,
Dragon. So
потому что
today
ему
it's a
явно не нравятся
combination. We
погодные
start the day
условия.
with a 1-second window,
Либо это означает что-то другое.
but once we get inside of 35
Я все-таки думаю, что он
minutes,
передумывает
it
потихоньку.
becomes an instantaneous window for
Говорит,
the
давайте-ка
Falcon 9,
мы
regardless of
сегодня
what
завернем
the,
полет,
customer
и
may
когда
be
погодка будет
requesting.
получше, тогда и полетим.
So there's a little explanation for folks who are wondering why we have such a tight window. Right
Okay,
now,
we
it looks
copy.
like we are
That is
bringing
just
the
a
last bits
comfort
of fuel
level, I
off
would
of the
say, is
stage,
just about what
and
we'd
liquid
expect. So I
oxygen
think,
is just about
that's
off of the
just the
stage.
standard stuff, but
So
not too
things
bad at all.
are clocking right along per the 40-minute
Copy all.
timeline. Everything looks good, and we'll wait to hear that we're clear, and then when we get the call for Bob and Doug to go ahead and disarm launch escape system, and the crew access arm will watch come back out, center itself around the Dragon hatch, and then the ingress team will go up there and open the hatch.
Все, ожидают главной команды,
Thank you for the science
скорее всего, из
lesson,
центра
John I.
управления, чтобы уже начать
Hey, no
взлет.
charge.
Ну, это журналист, конечно, ожидает команды, явно не центр управления. Они ожидают, скорее всего, хорошей погоды, либо подходящих условий, либо еще чего-то, либо совокупность факторов. Короче, что-то ждем.
Stage 2 fuel offload is complete.
And there we have the confirmation. Stage 2 offload's complete. And we should have now
Какие
just
же
the
мысли
RP1,
сейчас
so that
у астронавтов?
densified,
Кто не
propellant
смотрит в
for the,
этот монитор,
RP1 is
сидят там уже
kerosene.
третий час.
We should
И
be
как
under
минимум без
10%,
людей они там
a little
сидят
under
уже
10
час.
minutes until that's off. And then
И
we'll step through
думают.
those events we were discussing, where they'll be able to disarm the launch escape
Это лететь
system,
им тут
get the
вообще
arm back out there, and Bob and Doug
не знаю
can
сколько,
begin
но
to
вроде
exit the
как
Dragon spaceship.
буквально минут. А если бы они на Марс летели?
Still not the friendliest skies in the background.
That is Florida, though. The weather is constantly changing over there, which is why we always have to keep an eye on it through every single launch that we have out there. Bob and Doug are patiently waiting. As you can see, that is a live view of them on the Crew Dragon vehicle as they're waiting prop offload to complete. Second stage prop offload is complete. We are just waiting on first stage to
Stage 1
complete.
box offload is complete. Waiting on stage 1 fuel roughly 5 minutes or so.
Так, одну ступень
Again, the
какую-то
launch
прошли.
escape system is still armed. We are waiting for
5 минут
prop
на
offload
вторую.
to complete before they disarm that, and then they will be able to egress from the Crew Dragon vehicle.
Вот, уже заметно нервничает
Yes, sir, we
один
should
из
be just under 5
пилотов.
minutes away from the last of that fuel coming out of the Falcon 9 first
Интересно,
stage.
какой может
And
быть
then we'll see those
случиться
events start to pick
непредвиденный
back up.
момент,
We'll see
что
the
один
crew
из них вдруг
swing
сдаст
back
нервами
out.
и
They've
такой:
been in those
«Выпустите меня
seats for
отсюда!
a couple hours now.
Я не буду
They
лететь, я не
typically
хочу!»
get inside of
Вот что тогда
Dragon
произойдет?
a little over 2.5
Ему сразу голову
hours
отсекут
ahead
или
of
попозже?
launch. So they've been strapped into these seats for quite a while. They are custom sized though, so they're as comfortable and as snug as possible. Obviously, since they're going to be in them for a really long time, but most importantly, when you're doing that splashdown at the very end of the mission, it's your car seat, and splashing down or landing on land is not the most gentle of procedures in a capsule. So just really making sure that they're snug inside of that Dragon capsule. But we should be a little under 5 minutes away from the prop offload being completed.
Вот, читаю сейчас, что также сами ракеты Crew Dragon, на которые сейчас они как раз и взлетают, они вообще многоразовые. То есть, как уже показывал Маск ранее, он ее приземлял на платформу на воде, и, соответственно, после этого ее еще можно несколько раз, не знаю, какой у нее запас мощности, запас повторных взлетов, ее можно несколько раз использовать. Вот, кстати, сейчас показывают, на что именно смотрят астронавты. Они как будто в игру играют, такое вот прям оформление интересное. Они просто, это, скорее всего, трансляция того, что они смотрят вверх, то есть камеры, которые смотрят в небо. И вот они, вот один из них натирает свою панель.
On board the Dragon capsule. So we weren't able to launch today, though. The rendezvous on Saturday should be very similar
Так
to
вот,
what we would have had if we
сами эти
launched
аппараты
today,
многоразовые,
where it'll take them about 19 hours
но
to get to the International Space
по
Station.
контракту с
So they'll
НАСА
launch and they'll have a number of different
именно
events
для
that we'll be able to
транспортировки
walk
людей
you through,
разрешено их
including
использовать только
manual
один раз.
piloting of Dragon,
Но
and
потом
just
можно
really
их
putting the
использовать
spacecraft
как
through all of the paces before
как
it arrives at the
грузовик
International Space
для
Station.
грузовых
Because again,
разных
this is a
миссий.
test flight. And this is this last test before we certify the Dragon spacecraft for regular crewed flights, which will just be bringing up those long duration, 6-month, maybe even a year-long missions.
А НАСА, кстати, не дураки, они уже предварительно на случай неудачных испытаний, то есть если космонавты, не знаю, там умрут, наверное, заключили с Роскосмосом контракт на полет американского астронавта на корабле «Союз» МС-17 в октябре 2020 года. Вот, за этот полет агентство заплатит более $90 миллионов. Не верит, похоже, НАСА своего же миллиардера, изобретателя. Ну, конечно, не он лично изобретает, но он на все это вкладывает. Не верит, похоже, в свою индустрию. Поэтому заранее ищут обходные пути. Вот так выглядит Space Dragon со стороны.
To disarm that launch escape system, we'll see the crew access arm swing back in. But if you're just tuning in, expecting them to be in space, we did have a scrub today due to weather. Our next launch attempt is going to be this Saturday, May 30th at 3:22 p.m. Eastern Time. And just like we did today, we're going to be bringing you every single step of the way. It's going to look a little familiar if you watched all of today's, but it's going to be just as exciting.
I can imagine it might even be more exciting with all the anticipation that we've hyped this launch up for, with already going through it all today. But again, the more practice we have, the better off we will be. Hopefully next launch attempt we will have a flawless launch and actually be able to lift off with good weather.
Yeah, weather is going to be the big thing that we'll continue to watch. That was the culprit today for our scrub. And our initial weather reports already looking at about a 40% probability of violation. So as John and I was saying, the optimists in us have to say that's 60% good. So we're going to look at the good side of this, and that's roughly what we were in the days leading up to this. We won't have a rogue tropical storm forming off of South Carolina on us on Saturday, but Florida weather will always be dynamic, so we'll just continue to track and hopefully get a good chance to hit that window on Saturday.
And just a reminder, everything else on the vehicle and for the mission was looking good today. It was just the weather, which, as John I said earlier, and Lauren even referred to him mentioning this, weather is the one thing that we actually cannot control on our mission.
И космонавты уже начали молиться на запуск, либо уже на отмену запуска, так как сидеть в таком положении более 2 часов становится проблематично. Писают они, конечно же, в подгузники. Я думаю, с этим проблем нет. Нужно уже молиться на всех богов, чтобы вдруг небо развеяло. Ну, кстати, судя по тому, что мы видим, там полная жопа. Как бы сейчас у них там ливень не пошел с грозами. И в такую погоду они, конечно, не полетят, и придется отменить запуск. Just the weather. The weather в жопа. Мы не полетим. Отменяйте. Хоть бы в Angry Birds им дали поиграть на этих экранах. Ну реально, люди скучают. Они что даже сейчас ничего не решают. Никакой информации они не подсказывают. Все системы они уже проверили. Ну, это же тачпад. Дайте им поиграть во что-нибудь. Вон, плойку включили. Птичка пролетела.
Even hurricanes coming through or bad weather coming through and passing 20 minutes later and having
хотя бы видосики им ютубовские туда на экран закинут, пока они не решают хоть что-то с этим полетом.
But unfortunately, 4T0 today, weather was not on our side.
Yeah, and Jesse, this is John again. I dropped off to listen to a weather discussion. They were just giving the times, the lightning rule.
Затекают конечности, конечно.
Gone without a lightning concern. The attached anvil rule cleared, but the field mill rule is expected to clear at 58 minutes after the hour.
Из этой кабины. Ну вдруг тут покурить захочешь. Я же теперь терпеть до МКС.
So we were close, but we needed about 25 minutes later launch time.
Поднимите в скафандр, пацаны, прям в шлем.
Offending some people, but the old saying that says it's better to be on the ground wishing you were flying than flying wishing you were on the ground.
Угорают. Там, конечно, сидят на своих комфортабельных стульях. Их-то в космос не запускают, и не сидят они там 3 часа в таком положении в подгузниках. Вот угорают. Нормально. Вообще не уважают героев Америки. Heroes of America. Вот, должны удостовериться, что все будет безопасно. Но, если что, у нас уже есть контракт, поэтому, в принципе, можете ее запускать.
All of that prop has now been offloaded from Falcon 9.
Alright, venting vehicle tanks to nominal TPC set points for crew ingress.
At this moment, the launch escape system is still armed. Once the prop offload is complete, that'll be the next step in our procedures to have Bob and Doug begin to make their way out of Dragon.
LD, count on one. LD.
Так, что-то они там
We have the prompt here for
проверяют.
nominal crew egress. Okay, so we're ready for launch escape system disarm. As affirmed, ready
К
for
чему-то
launch escape
готовы?
disarm.
Готовы к запуску.
MD copies. You guys are ready. We'll.
Парни готовы. Парни уже давно готовы.
Advise the crew.
Они уже даже переготовы. Они уже как будто слетали и вернулись.
You copy that discussion. So with that, you are go for disarming launch escape system for section 2 of 5.100.
We'll put that in work. Section 2, disarming the launch escape system.
All right, that was the call we were waiting for. Propelling off of Falcon 9.
Они запускают такую огромную ракету просто за много миллионов долларов, уже 20-й год, а вот когда начинают между собой переговариваться, как будто они в окопах сидят и просто вот по телефонной линии переговариваются. Ну что за качество звука, а? Вот сейчас. Ну это же ужасно.
Copy that. We concur.
And showing then confirm the launch escape system has been disarmed.
And Dragon SpaceX, with that confirmation, you are go to open your visors and proceed to Section 3.
Секция 3.
Okay,
Что,
we'll
что
open
ты
the
с
visors
секции
and
3?
go to section
А,
3.
во, все уже открывает. Все, что ли, отменили запуск? А что это вы открыли? Погодите, вдруг кислорода нет.
As you
Что
heard, and you
происходит?
can see, Bob and Doug can now open their visors and
Открыли
get
они
ready
свои
for
визоры.
exiting the
Да,
vehicle.
да. Судя по
Again,
всему,
they kept their
з-
visors
от-
on while the launch escape
отменяют
system
запуск
was armed, while
из-за такой
offloading was
великолепной погоды.
continuing. And that is just to make sure that they
Просто
are safe.
охерительно. Мы уже
Now
все
that
были
there's no
готовы
more
к чуду,
propellant on
к
any of the
новшествам.
vehicles, they are safe
Хотя вот с этой
to
стороны вроде все нормально.
have
Хотя вот
disarmed
издалека
the
виден
launch escape system and now are
надвигающийся
getting
шторм.
ready
И, скорее
for
всего,
that
НАСА
crew
решила не
arm to
рисковать
swing back, the hatch
двумя
to
астронавтами
open and for them to egress.
и отменить
SpaceX Dragon with an
полет.
update. We're
Скорее всего, перенесут на день-два.
3.4, and we're ready for seat rotation.
Неужели они не могли вот предугадать погоду на один день? Они же за этому готовятся. Они же у них в космосе все это видно. Они же видят, куда двигается гроза, куда там ветер дует. Не могли уже на один день предугадать. Но не смогли. И вот подъезжает
And
трап
there's that crew arm
для
swinging
космонавтов,
back towards Dragon.
который отъехал еще часа два
Once that
назад
crew
от
arm
них.
is in place, they will be able to open the hatch on Crew Dragon. Bob and Doug's seats will rotate back out of launch position so that they can safely get out
Чудо
of their
не
seats
случилось.
and egress the vehicle.
And we heard they'll have what they call nominal egress, so just the normal procedures. for getting them
Жесткая
out of the
стыковка.
capsule. That means the same closeout
Просто
team
подолбился в
and the
отсек.
men will be able to assist as they
Где
come out.
плавный ход
They'll
движений?
arrive and get that hatch
Сейчас, кстати,
open,
посмотрим, как
and they'll be able to
выглядит
rotate the
непосредственно
seats. That'll
открытая
rotate
дверь
Bob and Doug pretty
в
much
кабину
forward,
пилотов.
where they'll be,
Пилотов-астронавтов.
in the original position, that the
Вот они
seats
уже
were
все
configured when they made
раздеваются.
their way into Dragon. It just
Сейчас
gets a little
перекурят
bit
как
out
раз, их же не
and under the
выпускали.
displays. It makes getting in and out of the capsule a little bit easier. They've been in those seats for about 3 hours at this point, so definitely a long day for the
Оп, ножки
crew.
затекли.
As they woke up about 6 hours prior to our T-0, had their breakfast, which we confirmed was steak and eggs, at least for Doug Hurley. And then they proceeded through all of the suit up and the trip to the pad.
А неужели они
making
не
their way
могли
inside
размяться,
Dragon, where
пока
they've been
они
for about the
сидели и
last
ждали
3
запуск?
hours at this point.
Их же, наверное,
We were on
предупредили бы
track
хотя бы
for
минут за
on-time
5, что
liftoff,
все, пацаны, там,
right at
пристегиваемся.
4:33 p.m.
Мы сейчас
Eastern
полетим.
time, but did have to
А тут
scramble
они
along
сидят,
their
прям как будто 10
17
часов
minutes
сидели,
before launch
и им
to
вообще
do a
запрещали
weapon.
двигаться.
So for now,
Начали разминать
we've
все косточки.
offloaded all of the propellant off of Falcon 9. The launch escape system has been disarmed. That crew access arm is back right up next to Dragon, as you can see in that view on the
Как
left.
прикольно, где-то
Pretty
сбоку
soon
руку
we'll see the teams
вытаскивает.
arrive to get the hatch open, get Bob and Doug out, and they'll make their way back to crew quarters and their quarantine. It is important to note that throughout the entire process of them getting into Dragon, suiting up all of those different steps, they maintain that same quarantine that they've been in since for about 2 weeks now, and that is specifically for events like today, where we have to scrub and just go to another day. So we don't want to break that quarantine once we're putting them into that launch vehicle, and that's a standard quarantine that we have for any crew members flying to the International Space Station. The current COVID-19 pandemic obviously puts a little bit of
Ну
extra
все, уже
pressure
про
and a
пандемию
little bit
начали
of an extra spotlight on them.
заговаривать, хотя
But
не
they're
понимаю, к чему
following a
она
lot of
тут.
the same
Ну,
procedures that
явно
we
не
have
из-за
in place
нее не
just to keep
взлетели.
crew members healthy before they go and spend several months in space in an enclosed environment with just a couple of other people.
Right, and it's a little bit more difficult to get them help on the space station, right? So we want to make sure that when they do head up to the space station, that they are fully healthy. So this, again, is standard procedure, not just because of this pandemic that's going on. This is a standard procedure for astronauts to quarantine prior to heading to the station.
Ничего их не открывают. Сейчас вдруг запустит. Что так долго делать? Неужели нельзя просто быстренько подняться, освободить бедняжек, чтобы они сняли с себя эти супергеройские костюмы и пошли по своим делам? Либо... Не, ну в любом случае надо выйти. И, возможно, старт они перенесли просто на несколько часов, пока погода не улучшится.
Looks like they're getting a chance to stretch their legs, though.
Yeah.
Dan, Jesse, I'm monitoring along in the scrub procedure right now. They're getting the goes to get the folks back to the pad, the crew that'll open the hatch. So they have notified the team chief, launch engineering, to return to the pad. As a reminder, around the pad, the
кстати, я был
Air
прав,
Force
у них
sets up,
экран с
Air
тачпадом.
Force and NASA set up roadblocks to make sure
Потому что
nobody
iPad
gets
так
into the
вставлен.
hazard area.
Поэтому можно игрушечку
So
закачать
they
туда
will
и
head to the roadblocks,
наслаждаться
they'll
в
pull them
полете.
open so that they can drive to the pad. So launch director, I think, is estimating it's still about 15 minutes for the crew to drive all the way down out to 39A, get up the tower, and then begin operations on the hatch. They have confirmed that the purge of the Dragon service section, which is nitrogen during the countdown, to avoid an oxygen leak, that is back on air now. The crew access
И,
arm is
пожалуй,
on
можно
air, so
закончить
they're
трансляцию
ready
на
for
этом моменте.
the egress team
И уже
to get
тогда
up into the
вдруг,
tower.
если они
But it's
передумают,
gonna take
уже
them a
будет
little bit still, I
экстренное
think, to
включение,
drive down the road in
либо
the vehicles
постараемся
and go
засечь их
up
уже
the
завтра.
But everything continuing to
Посмотрим.
run for
В любом
a
случае,
normal
подписывайтесь,
scrub countdown,
ставьте лайки
which we
и
have had
до
the
новых
opportunity to
встреч.
practice with